problem or research question that my literature review helps to define. What type of literature review am I conducting? Am I looking at issues of theory, methodology, policy, qualitative research? And the example says on the effectiveness of the new procedure, qualitative research on the studies and many other things. These questions are very much common to all the fields, whether they're management, science, arts, commerce. They all can ask these questions to themselves. The another one is important one, that what is the scope of my literature review? How far I can widen my horizon to discuss all these things? That also is what I have to ask myself. And how good was my information seeking? While I was reading the entire review, how well I have done my work. That also is very, very important. If I have failed in seeking the right kind of an information, then perhaps I may not lead to what I exactly wanted to do. The another one is that have I critically analyzed what I have read? Have I done the critical evaluation in a better way or not? All those points has to be pinpointed, written down into the notes format so that it can be extended into paragraph format later on. At the same time, when you are asking some questions to our own self, we have to ask the similar kind of questions to the books or the research topic that we are dealing here. See the slide. Ask yourself questions like this about each book or article you are including. So we are doing a review of so many books, so many articles, and my question to those articles are like, has the author evaluated the literature relevant to the problem or issue or not? Does the author include literature taking positions she or he does not agree with? This is very important. You may take a position with what you agree with. Has that particular writer taken a position where he does not agree with those kind of a thing or not? In a research study, how good are the basic components of the study design? And how accurate and valid are the measurements? Is the analysis of the data accurate and relevant to the research question? Are the conclusions validly based upon the data and analysis or not? Now, this is where you are really questioning the research that we are doing. There is a lot of article available to us, but our question is that how far those things are relevant, and these questions will tell us that what I have to take into my consideration and what I have to avoid. Well, so the basic overviewing the kind of a thing, we can say that literature review is something that we are reading secondary and tertiary sources before coming to the primary sources.
Exactly.
And now we have seen that our questions should be clear, that what kind of questions I am asking, what I want to do. But unless we see some of the examples, this point may not be clear. We have to see some of the examples that how this thing has been done. So we can at least see some examples here. I have brought 4 examples today to discuss that how these things can be done in an effective way. That gives you an appropriate example that how this research work has been done by some people and how it can be carried out. Well, the examples that we are going to see, they are some models. It may not be that they are the ideal models. You may also question those models that, okay, you have done this, but this can also be questioned.
That is the first rule, rather.
That is being a skeptical. Exactly. That is the very first thing, that whatever comes before us, we have to question them with skeptical mindset, that how far it is good. Unless we don't become skeptical towards what we are reading, we cannot do an appropriate literature review. Well, let us see the first one.
Screen, please.
Well, this particular screen deals with one research that is done in psychology. But the methodology that has been adopted here for the literature review, that is quite interesting one. And this is what we have to concentrate, that how a research scholar, a student and his guide has done a kind of a dialogue, and what they have documented in such a way that becomes a kind of an ideal literature review. Well, let us see here on the screen. The important part I am reading out from the screen. It is done by William Aston, York College, CUNY. The introduction I am reading here. A student began a short literature review on the stigma of the mentally ill and perceptions of dangerousness. Working through psych articles, she found 3 likely articles. When she read each, she wrote a paragraph description of each. The very first step what student is doing here. She identified the topic of research, and now on the basis of that particular topic, she has found 3 articles. And after reading those articles, she has summarized the article the way it is visible here. The first article was written by Mr. Alexander, published in 2003, and he is giving she is giving the brief introduction of what is in that particular article. The second is by Corrigan and the group of the writers, and that review is given here. The third one is by Mr. Martin and the group of the writers, and brief paragraph explaining that what it is. So the first step is identifying a topic. Second one is that you are going through the literature review, and this particular case has 3 articles related to that particular topic. Name of the writers are written, and then a brief summary of those things are given. Well, giving summary is necessary, but that is not the end of literature review. This is the first step, in fact. Next, we see on the screen, next, she decided upon the order of the paragraph in the paper. After putting those things in a chronological order, she found that this is not an appropriate order for her own research. So she redesigned it, and then she gave a new format to that according to the topic that she is working on. So she put Martin first, then Alexander second, and Corrigan and the group third one. The chronology is changed looking at the point of view of the topic and the necessity that is required there. So reshuffling the chronology, that is the another step that comes in literature review. Next one, she carefully chose the order of the paragraph so she could talk about some of the points. Now these are the focus that she is identifying into the main research topic that she wanted to do. And what are they? Number 1, 2 and 3 are mentioned there. The first one is that people respond to the mentally ill with fear and rejection. Second one, contact reduces both rejection and the fear. And the third one, how to best arrange the contact to reduce stigma. So this were his objectives, or rather we can say it is the hypothesis on which she is working. And based on that hypothesis, she is now again reorganizing the literature from the subject of psychology. Secondly, the example will be from the study of one ELT, the PhD thesis, and one of the chapters written there we will see. The third one will be very important because that will show some of the reviews that has been done by the guide on the workings of the research scholars. And the last, which according to me is one of the best literature review, that is on computer assisted language learning call. Well, so first let us see step by step drafting from the topic of literature review. Well, it comes from William Aston, York College, CUNY. The beginning is very important. A student began a short literature review on the stigma of the mentally ill and perceptions of dangerousness. Working through psych articles, she found 3 likely articles. When she read each, she wrote a paragraph description for each. What we have to understand here is that the first of all, the research scholar is identifying a topic, and then she has undergone a literature review from which she found 3 very useful articles, and now she is writing a summary of those articles. I will just give you an overview of those things, will not read it thoroughly. Alexander and Link has written in 2003. This is the overview of that particular article. The second one is written by Corrigan, Rowan, Green, London and the group of the writers in 2002. This is the brief summary of that. And the third one is written by Martin Jacquet and the group of writers, and this is the summary. So the first step is writing a brief summary of the things that we have seen here. Now, see on the screen. Next, she decided upon the order of the paragraphs in the paper. She found that according to her own topic, the chronological order or the way she has read it is not very important, but she has to reshuffle the chronology. So for her, perhaps Martin's article is more important than the Alexander's, which is given the first. So she is reshuffling those things, and look on the screen. First comes Martin's article and what he has examined. The second one is by Alexander and the link, and the third one is by Corrigan and Rowan. Well, she carefully choose the order of the paragraphs. So she could talk about, that is the hypothesis of his research, that people respond to the mentally ill with fear and rejection. Second, contact reduces both rejection and fear. And third, how to best arrange the contact to reduce stigma. One point that we have to keep in mind here is that whatever is our hypothesis, based on our hypothesis, we have to reorganize, we have to reshuffle the entire literature review. Well, she is rewriting the things. Now she added introductory and concluding sentences, paragraph hooks and short transitions paragraph to help the flow of ideas. Now this is the flow of idea, that is very important thing. Various research scholars has done their work in various times, and how to organize their flow of idea according to our own hypothesis, and this is where this becomes an exemplary kind of a thing. Well, let us see on the screen. This blue and maroon color, which shows that the maroon color is the addition that is done by the research scholar into what was reviewed earlier at the first and the second stages by the research scholar. So these are the additions. Say for example, Alexander and Link 2003 examined contact with the mentally ill and so kind of a thing. In the third phase of the literature review, these words are added as a filler in the case. In the final stage, she needs to write an introductory and concluding paragraph. She wrote the concluding paragraph first. In this paragraph, she needs to overview the paper and make a conclusion. Well, quite interesting one. We normally believe that we have to start with an introduction, but in this case of a literary review, the research scholar has done the review, reorganized according to his own ideas, and then wrote conclusion first, and now then she is going towards an introductory paragraph. Now, what is the reason for this? It can be an obvious question in the mind of any research scholar. Well, the point is that if we have an introduction which has our hypothetical statement, if we don't know what we are going to conclude with the things, maybe our hypothesis itself is challenged by our own reading. If you want to avoid this particular mistake, if you call it a mistake, then it is better to conclude a kind of a thing and then go back to an introductory paragraph, which will give us a better flow of ideas also. Well, so this is the first example that we have discussed, and how step by step one research scholar in the topic of psychology is moving ahead and coming to a conclusion that this is a particular research, a literary review. Well, coming to the next example. This is from the PhD thesis on ELT. Normally we find that this one, the literature review normally carries chapter number 2 in dissertations and the PhD thesis. Normally it is found, and people normally agree with this idea that the first one is an introduction and second one normally goes for the literature review. It may happen that at sometimes the research guide may say that you just include your review of the literature with the introduction, and then it becomes a kind of a part of an introduction also. Well, let us see here on the screen. Well, this paragraph speaks about this particular literary review. Various studies undertaken by distinguished scholars have broadened understanding of related issues. For example, Hanumantha Rao, 1994, interrelated the 5 themes with agriculture growth, rural poverty, environmental degradation, and then later on we come down and we see that there is a reference to another writer, Mani Kumaran, 1997, and then later on we find Bina Agrawal, 1997. Now this is how the review that has been done by various writers has been interspersed in paragraph format. This particular research scholar has not chronologically ordered everything as the scholar of the psychology has done, but here she is just putting those things according to her flow of idea. So time and again different writers are coming and what they are saying, she is just involving those things into her flow of ideas. So this also is another style of doing research, literary review. This one is far better for those who are doing a survey kind of research.
Exactly.
So if our thing requires a survey as a methodology, then this helps a lot. In various times, what was the kind of a conclusion or an argument that was being discussed by those critics, and then we are finalizing those things in a form of this thing. The conclusion of this particular chapter, which I am not showing to you because of the size of the fonts, which are not exactly readable, but it says that it is here that these all readings are ending, and from here a step has been taken, an advanced step has been taken here. So that is the second point. The third example of the literature review is how a teacher is observing the work that has been done by the scholar and what kind of changes has been suggested.
I think all those red colors are
the
suggestions.
Yeah, again I regret the font size that are here, but these are I cannot just copy paste because I wanted to show exactly what has been done by the research scholar in this slide. Well, so the slide blacks are the typing work by the research scholar and what he has done, and then the remarks, then the points that has been by red ink done by the guide. So it says the depression affects over 20% of adolescents. It is the disorder that disturbs their mood, causes a loss of interest or pleasure in activities they should enjoy, and make them irritable. Well, so the remark that comes is that explains why the topic is important. So it should mention very clearly in the beginning that this topic has this particular importance, and this is where the hypothesis of the topic stands. This is the importance of the introduction in literature review of the literature.